All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. And today we're going to talk some fitness and some football, and who knows if that'll send us down some rabbit holes, considering what's going on.
Well, we
Hello, hello.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, there
What'd
you
you do?
are. I don't know. I broke it.
Yes, you did, because you're super echoey now.
going through the what? Hello? Is this
All
better?
right. Yeah,
Okay, we're back.
everything's back to normal.
Okay, so apparently this cord is fidgety now. So, which sucks because this is the expensive microphone. But all right. Okay, so what I was going to say is it's kind of a somber note because we were originally planning on talking football injuries well before this weekend,
Hmm.
and then the thing happened last night, which is there's a lot of mixed feelings on that. You know, part of it is, as I was talking right before we got on, should they have continued the game or should they have stopped it like they did? Uh, and I don't know, mixed feelings because you, as the human, you want to say yes, it was the right thing to do to stop it. But we are always balancing the individual with everything else, everybody else, the thousands of people in the stands, the rest of the football team, the fans watching at home, the league as a whole, because now we're going to have a clusterfuck for playoff positioning, and the other teams. If
Yeah.
say you're half a game out because they completely cancel this game, then someone's going to be leaped over, or because this one had consequences to it.
Yes.
It wasn't one that was, well, their position is locked or anything along those lines. So, I mean, what do we do from here? Do we shift the whole season a week so they can play the game? Because there's no breaks. Do you play the game in the middle of a week where so that the team is going to have to play basically a Saturday, a Wednesday, and a Sunday in a row? That's not good for the players either. So when
Yeah.
player health, you're putting a lot of other people at risk as well. And then there's the thousands of fans that paid for the tickets and everything included in that. And the first thing that came to my mind was this guy. Whoops, let me get on the right tab before I share. This guy here, if people who watch football remember, this guy, he was running kickoff coverage and he broke his neck in a collision on the field. And it took a long time for them to get him stabilized. And this is where they had the
Hmm.
breakthrough of treatment along the way to the hospital, where they basically freeze their neck and the spinal cord to preserve it so they can try to put it back the way it's supposed to be. And they played that game. They finished that game. You know, you look at the Theismann injury. They finished that game. You look at you brought up a guy who broke his back. You know, they finished that game. And as the other players on the field, of course, it's going to affect you. Yes, we understand it's going to affect you, but what can you do once they're taken to the hospital? But sit and worry about it. And
The only thing I can think is that the difference here is now I didn't watch the game because I refused to pay money to any Disney subsidiary, so I refuse to get any sort of thing that has ESPN. Um, did they have to revive him on the field?
apparently 16 minutes of CPR
Wow.
until
See
the
that to me,
EMS got
that's the
there.
difference. There's a big difference between, you know, stabilizing someone's neck and or back. And then maybe you get a thumbs up, maybe you don't, but you can tell the guy is alert and communicating to the medical staff, even if it's something really severe like Everett, where it was, you know, a neck injury, a spinal cord injury. There's a difference between that and actually having to revive somebody on the field. I think that's going to have a whole nother level of emotional impact.
But at the same time, the end result is he left alive. He left not aware,
Hmm.
probably, but he left breathing and his heart beating. I don't know if they had an AED on the field. I hope they did. And if they didn't, I think that's against the law. Even a high school team has to have an AED on the
Really?
field.
Well, then I assume they would. Um,
I even have an AED handy, and I'm poor.
Um, but to your point, there's a major impact there. It's not just the, you know, oh, we're just Calish douches who want to watch our football game. Well, okay, but now what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're going to have to do something funky like they did during the COVID season where you had random Wednesday afternoon games because,
But even
oops,
then, even then, if you're talking player safety, that same team has to turn
yep,
around and play
yep.
the next weekend.
What the, let me share here. Yeah, because you're going to have to squeeze it in because everybody has a game the last week. There's no more buys. So you're going to have to squeeze in the middle of the week somehow. Where'd I go? There we go. Yeah. All right. So I knew it mattered, but it matters doubly. Because you see here, Chiefs are 13-3, Bills are 12-3. So that mattered for
Home field advantage.
home field advantage. But now you've got the Bengals at 11-4 and the Ravens at 10-6.
Well, and you've got the
They
Bengals.
play each other. They play each other. Oh, you know what? I just noticed it saying TBD. It was supposed to be the last Monday night game, Ravens and Bengals. So if the Bengals would have lost and then the Ravens beat the Bengals, that may have I don't know the what's their
division.
division record. It doesn't show me here, but that could have flipped the AFC North.
Well,
So
not only that, if the Chiefs lose 2 in a row and the Bengals win 2 in a row, you could have a possibility of a bye week.
well, only the first seed gets the bye now, so
Oh, okay.
uh
Well, again, with the
that
Bills
would have
and the
put them at
Chiefs,
13.
with the Bills
That
and the
would have
Chiefs.
that would have conceivably put yeah, so you could conceivably have the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Bengals all could have ended the season with 13 wins, and then it comes down to the tiebreakers to see who actually ends up with that number one seed,
Mm-hmm.
which is an even bigger deal now. So it's only since it's only the top seed now instead of the top two.
Yeah, especially if you squeeze that game in, because if you're the Bills or the Bengals, you're also playing for that bye week because now you need that extra rest. So you can end up handicapping the number one seed, or just giving it to the Chiefs because the Bills never play that game.
What a
Because
mess.
if the Chiefs win out and the Bills win one more, they never have the opportunity to get that other win, and now they don't get the bye week.
You had a video of
Yeah.
the actual injury, right?
Okay, and now we're going to reserve judgment on any global causes or effects or anything. But what the experts are calling this is commotio cordis, which you see by the graphic there, usually involves an impact to the chest. So it hits the chest, hits the heart at just the wrong time in the beat, and it throws the beat off, and it can't. Your body doesn't get it back into rhythm in time to stop it from going into
Hold
ventricular
on. Hold on.
fibrillation.
No, go back to that. Just no comment. Just look at that last sentence of the douchey dork who posted this.
Yeah, this is again. There was a very quick response to say this. So let's look at the actual hit. Trigger warning: a person gets hurt on this hit. It doesn't look bad till after the hit, though. It looks like a pretty routine tackle. Boom. He does get hit in the chest, but it looks like the main impact was to his chin.
So that's Hamlin there is 3.
Yeah. Let's watch it again. Okay, so watch. I wonder if they give a different angle. Oh yeah, they do give a different angle. So let's watch it from that angle again. Yeah, hit to the chest and to the face. He gets up. looks normal, looks routine, and gets dizzy. And that's exactly how it feels from someone who has had fibrillations and gone tachycardia before. You're good, you're good, you're good till you're not. See, I don't see the violent hit to the chest. It looks like the helmet hits to the crown or even the
Yeah,
shoulder.
because the face mask is coming in here up high. So
Let me try
I
to
mean,
pause it right on the hit. Ah,
there.
let's go back just a little bit. Okay, so there's the hit. Here's the crown of the helmet hitting him in the shoulder. Now the shoulder hits him on the left side of the chest, which would be where the heart is. But the other part is timing. If it hits it right in that moment of the beat. So this
Well,
is
it's also there's a reason the douchey arrogant physician had a picture of a kid getting hit by a baseball, because that's where it's most known to happen, because you have a very focused impact directly on the heart. Obviously, I'm not a physician, but this is something very different. This isn't a precise impact. You're having the impact that's hitting the chest is being spread across the chest and shoulder and even the neck, because there was some face mask contact there too. So it's not the same thing.
let's blow this tweet up. Source of blow. And again, as you talked about, something hard and very narrow. Hockey puck, lacrosse ball, baseball, fist or elbow. Again, we're not saying it's incidents of the other thing, as he jumped the gun to accuse anybody who questions the official current narrative, which again, you see these mounting responses, you automatically have to say they had these things in their hip pocket just in case something happens. But yeah, it's a possibility that for he ended that tweet in, like you said, a douchey way, whereas it should be, my hypothesis is this and this is why. I think this is the most likely explanation, and then time will tell, which is why I really didn't want to go into too deep detail, because we talked about, we like to let things marinate a little bit. It just so happened it was the topic for today was a football injury that made me want to open with that. But again, we got to open all possible avenues. In fact, it could be the fact that he was so young and athletic, he didn't know he already had an underlying heart condition. He could have been prone to arrhythmias in the first place. He could have a valvular issue that didn't show up except maybe as a murmur on a if you did this the stethoscope or the this happens all the time. Adults find out they have underlying heart conditions all the time. That might be the answer as well, or it could be what a lot of people are out there
What we're
thinking
not
as
supposed
well.
to talk about.
What we're not supposed to talk about. So it could be all of those, and they're all on the table at this point. Time will tell. They're
This is uh this is actually something that I've had percolating in my brain for a while since we talked to Steven, basically, and I don't think I've said it out loud, is that at some point anecdotal becomes evidence. When you pile up enough anecdotes, now suddenly you have statistics. That's all statistics are a correlation of hundreds, thousands, etc. anecdotes. So, douchey physician talking about unscientific, terrible, horrible people. We have been ignoring for 2 years now. Let's tiptoe and not go into too many details, but just go ahead and look up, just do a search for a video montage of soccer players collapsing on the field. At what point do the dozens and dozens and dozens of examples of that cease to be anecdotes and start to be evidence that needs to be examined closer? But it is simply ignored. It's verboten. We're not allowed to talk about it. Same with the new strange phenomenon of died suddenly. And then that's that. There's actually a documentary recently released. I think it may be on YouTube, but they may have kicked it off. I don't know. But documentary is called Died Suddenly, and it is about this phenomenon that people, young, healthy people, are dying suddenly, and the headline is Died Suddenly, and then there's no further investigation, follow up, what's this? Curious. I don't know. Let's move on.
I'm looking for a study here. I think this is it. No, it's two here. No, I don't want your cookies. I want cookies, but not your cookies.
Cookies.
Here you go. Go away, cookie thing. So what I'm looking for here is an autopsy study out of Germany, because it has great visuals on what they found in these sudden death.
Are these the clots?
No, these are not clots.
Okay.
Here we go. Share screen. All right. What we're looking at is lymphocyte activity in the cardiac tissue. And this is and so what they found was in these autopsies of these people that died suddenly is exactly why mild myocarditis is not mild. Because these lymphocytes stick, basically what the lymphocytes do is a T cell response creates an immune cell that goes in there and kills the cell that is making the spike protein. So one of the things about the mRNA vaccine is it doesn't give you the spike protein and your body fights it like a normal one. It promotes your body to make spike protein. And so that gives two responses. When that spike protein bursts out of the cell, you develop an antibody response, which is what everybody's familiar with. But also you have technically an infected cell. So your immune system says, I'm going to kill that cell. Well, that doesn't affect much if it's a couple cells in your liver or in the shoulder like it was supposed to be and stay in there. But if that's cardiac tissue, you don't replenish that. Those cells are dead and they're gone. That's why you never hear of heart cancer, because there's very little cell growth, at least to the degree in the rest of our body, in the cardiac tissue. And that's the reason, because a grain of sand size tumor in your heart will kill you. Well, also a grain of sand size scar tissue will also do the same thing. In fact, the reverse of that's an ablation, where they go in and they burn where the circuits are going wrong so the circuit goes in the right way. And what they found were these people, the certain percentage of these people had this scar tissue, which threw their rhythm off. And when you throw the rhythm off in the atria, you're a little tired. When that goes to the ventricles, you basically lose blood flow because you go tachycardia and your heart is pumping too fast for it to actually fill up with blood again and then pump it back out. And then you just lose oxygen to your brain and you pass out, like we just saw the kid pass out right there. And if no one's around to revive you, which most of these people were found in their homes, then if you're not revived before your brain just loses enough oxygen to not want to revive, you're dead. It's like that. It's not a bad way to go, but it's an early way to go.
This is gonna make me mad.
Well, again, we'll put a pin in it till we get more information, because again, these Twitter twatters that are posting, if you think it's this, then you're anti-science. These options are all on the table still, and further investigation will uncover. Hopefully, they're doing enough, because you want to uncover the cause. If it was one blunt force, he's probably going to be okay as long as they revived him in time that he didn't have any brain damage. But if there's an underlying cause, no matter what caused it, we want to find it. And not only that, now that we're seeing this all over the world in all sports, you better have those fucking AEDs all over the sideline.
Mhm.
You're an NFL team making billions of dollars, and AEDs about 1,600. You need to have 10 of those to where somebody can sprint at any given time with one to the field. And that's
Mhm.
under normal situations where you could have someone get hit in the chest.
I better stop myself before I go down some rabbit holes. But
Okay, let me give you
a
a
lot of rabbit
little
hole
bit
there.
of funny irritation when it comes to this. The Canadian study that says being unvaccinated increases your chances of having an auto accident.
Wait, what?
Yeah, being unvaccinated makes you less likely to, or more likely to die in an auto accident. Throw aside all the other confounding variables where they didn't, control for miles driven, and lower income people tend to commute more. Lower income people are also less likely to get vaccinated, but they're also less risk averse to begin with. So throw all of that out in the data collection. This is where it's nefarious and not just stupid. They did not include anybody who had sudden death in the accident or possibly leading to the accident. So if they were dead on arrival, they were not included in the study, which would exclude everybody that had an arrhythmia that caused them to pass out while they were driving.
You don't do that study unless you're trying to make a point. That study is not a study of curiosity to seek information and answers. That is a study to prove a point. It's like how polls aren't really polls anymore. They are done to push a narrative, not to reveal what people actually think. That's why you have to look at how questions are actually asked. You have to look at who was actually sampled, because they're not going around just looking for information so that we can all be further enlightened. It's no, they want to push a narrative and say, see, this is the side that is in the right. This is the side that the majority of people agree with. That's what that study is. Study.
You have how many people are in the NFL? Let's see. Just on active rosters at any given time.
What is
How
it?
many teams are there?
50,
32
32, and I think
times
there's
53.
53. Okay.
Yeah, 53-man roster. 1,696 people in the NFL at any given time, and that's not including practice squad or just free agents floating around. The Pfizer data shows 1 in 800 prevalence for a serious adverse event, and that is age stratified, so that includes old people and all the way down to young people. So we're just going to leave it at that and not presume the young people would have a higher incident. So 1 in 800 AE, at least 2 people in the NFL. If you forced everybody, and we just very well might have seen one of them. And that's a serious AE. Those are reported. If it was subclinical, we don't know that number. Unless you go by the Thailand study where they tested kids before and then tested them after. Oh, amazing how a randomized trial works when you do it right.
I'd heard about the Thai study. I hadn't heard that that's what they did, and that so I hadn't heard why their data was good. I had just heard from people I trust that it was a good study and this is what it showed.
Well, I take that back. It wasn't a randomized trial because every kid in the study was vaccinated. It was a prospective cohort, but they did a pre-testing. So the whole panel they ran troponin levels, they did the EKGs, they did the echoes and all of that. Then they had their treatment, and then they did a follow-up, and this was the percentage that had this not before and then after, and it was relatively high compared to what we're told.
this is why we have talked about this when we've talked about what data is available and what isn't and why. That's a seriously problematic study
Mm-hmm.
because hold on, if you even suspect that this is a possibility, why are you doing this to kids? That is that is the entire point of what the Nuremberg Code is supposed to be about. You're not supposed to do these things
Well, except
under the Nuremberg Code.
this would not qualify as Nuremberg because the people knew they were being studied. They accepted the fact that they were study participants.
I have a hard time believing that there was true informed consent there because we are going to study this to see if you have heart damage after we give you this shot. Who wants to volunteer for that? What parent is going to willingly sign their child up for that? That to me, that makes me feel all sorts of queasy.
No, it makes me feel queasy in the sense that it shouldn't be at the human testing state yet, because we should have taken more other data, rat studies, maybe primate studies, or something along those lines, before it got to this point. And it definitely shouldn't be on something that's actively available to everybody in the world at the time.
Yeah.
But as far as informed consent goes, they have been. And what parent would do that? Well, there's a percentage of parents that just completely believe in it already. So if it wasn't a mandatory follow-up, how many of those would have gone unreported because the parents would have been willfully blind to anything that happened with their child? That's the problem with VAERS, is there's so many people out there that will attribute their symptoms to anything else because they so believe in the product.
Yes, and you also have to take into account how many parents have been so terrified that any amount of risk is worth it because getting the thing that is supposed to be prevented is so horrible that we're all going to die if we don't. This is 1918. This is smallpox. This is whatever. Data be damned.
Yeah. Let's go on to the happier injuries, if there's such thing. Okay, you brought this up, so I'm going to let you give the backdrop because I did the technical work, but I don't know where you got it from.
I had a clickbaity idea, because last week the Jalen Hurts injury was in the news because Philly had taken over Minnesota as the top seed, and they had some big games coming up, and then Jalen Hurts gets hurt, and there's a lot of big talk from the coach and from the Eagles office that, yeah, he's fine, he's going to be ready to go. But then there were some rumors floating around that, well, it might not be an AC joint injury, it might be an SC joint injury, which is a lot more serious. That AC, yeah, you could take a week or two, do some rehab on it, do some work on it, and you can come back. But if it's an SC injury, then there might be some more trouble there.
Okay, so let's start with exactly what a sprain is. So people go, "Oh, I hope it's just a sprain." Well, a sprain is a general term. So a strain is muscle and tendon. A sprain is ligament. Ligament being bone to bone, tendon being muscle to bone. The problem with it being a general term is I hate when I get diagnoses from doctors or clinicians to my clients that it's like, oh, it's this, it's just a sprain. Well, what degree? There are different degrees of sprain. First degree is just a minor stress of that tissue beyond just soreness. So soreness technically is a strain in your muscle, but we call it a strain when it's something you have to take a break from. You can't just work through. So first degree is just minor muscle tears, but the muscle itself is still completely intact. A grade 2 sprain, or the same with the ligament. So tears in the fibers, but the ligament itself is completely intact. Grade 2 is where it actually will partially tear the muscle, the ligament, but not all the way through. So it's not completely intact, but it's not detached as well. And then a grade 3 is usually a complete rupture of the ligament. So that usually, depending on the placement of it, has to be done surgically, repaired surgically. So that's the difference with the degrees of sprain. But let's look at this joint specifically, or at least an overview of what you'd see the difference between AC and SC joint. So this is a nice little skeleton here. SC is the sternoclavicular joint, this top one right here. And we can see where it lands. That looks like an important place. So as you said, it might be more damaging. And then your AC joint is your acromioclavicular joint, which is out here. And I've got individual models of those as well. Let's start with the AC joint. This is your AC joint. This is your clavicle. So this is your collarbone right here. This is your acromion process, which comes off your scapula, your shoulder blade. And then you see all of these ligaments going in and out of it. I think this page has a side view as well. Yeah, so here's a side view. So this front part is your clavicle, which is your collarbone. And then this is the top of your shoulder blade. And this is the long ligament that connects them. And then those other two are the ones that were coming off of it before. So we'll go back to the original picture. AC joint. Now what you see here is a lot of space and kind of long ligaments in between, and a lot of them coming from different angles. What that allows for is a lot of movement. So this is the humerus right here. There's your shoulder. When that comes up, if this doesn't move, then it's going to butt against it and pinch. So it'll stop you about right here. Whereas if you have movement in that, you can raise your arm. So it's got a lot of space, longer ligaments, and allows for a lot of movement, which also makes it more vulnerable. That's why it's the more common injury, because it's distal to the body, so it's further out. Anything further out is usually more likely to get injured anyways. And it allows for a lot of movement and therefore vulnerable to being torn in some way, shape, or another. So that's the AC joint. They connect those two back together if there's a strain or sprain, and hopefully it heals because you immobilize your shoulder for a little while. If it's not a complete tear, then it can heal on its own, but you have to give it a break. So that's one. The other one, SC joint, is that coming through clear, or do I need to move us?
Nope, that's clear.
Okay. So this right in the middle is your sternum, your breastbone, and then these are the collarbones coming off of it, and underneath that, it looks like the bull horns. Those are your top rib. So just look at the difference in the ligament there. It encapsulates the whole the whole clavicle and connects it to the sternum. And then you have other support structures underneath that. So very short tendons, very little space, and a lot of support. So it's very unlikely that you injure this because of all of that structure. But the difference is, if we get back to where I can just give you a visual. So if my hand is my breastbone, and so the end of the pin is the end of the collarbone, the difference is this needs to be able to move to make space, but this needs to stay in its pivot point, right? And very solidly, because there's a lot of structure to support there. You've got your pec connected to the clavicle and connected to the sternum. You've got your sternocleidomastoid, which is actually a super strong muscle in your neck here, connected to that. All of these things that allow you to have a solid force in the middle of your body are all connected to that one thing. So if you have a weak structure there and you just clench your teeth, pop. Or if you contract your pec, pop. Whereas at the other end, if you contract your pec and it's sprained on this end, it may shift it just a little bit, but it's not providing a stable structure for that pec to contract. So that's why that's where the severity would come in, one sprain to the other. Now it is surprising that the SC was sprained. I would like to see the movement that happened there, because usually even if you have that moment where you hit the ground and your arm pops up, that's still usually the AC joint or even a broken collarbone before that joint goes.
Yeah, I couldn't find a video of the injury. And I didn't even remember how he got injured. But you could also see I assume that an AC joint strain, if it's
Sprain.
sprain, an AC joint sprain, I feel like that's something you could play through even as a quarterback
Depends
as
on the
well.
severity, because if it's a
Yeah.
grade 3, your collarbone basically just goes poink and sticks straight up. So it depends on the severity.
Because it's come loose and it's just wobbling around. So it feels really solid, but the collarbone floats there. That's how we have so much movement in the shoulder joint. But the throwing motion of a QB is very different from a pitcher. You don't have
It's a
as
lot
big of a
tighter.
windmill motion. You want it to be tighter. You need it to be tighter so the ball comes out faster. So if he's got a good compact throwing motion, then I feel like an AC joint, give it a little bit of rest, and then you're ready to go. And it makes me think that these rumors might be accurate because going back to the schedule here, let's jump to the standings. Yeah, the last week, the odds of Dallas flipping that position were pretty low. So, all right, he just heard it. Let's let him sit out the Cowboys game, even though it's important. We'll go ahead and rest him because we would have to lose all 3 of our last games to lose that top position to Dallas. Okay, well, then you lose that game to Dallas. I would think even if you have to play a little bit hurt, you'd put Hurts back in for the game against who was it? The Aints, who were not supposed to win that game. Unless you're just that confident that your backup could beat the Aints because they're the Aints. But now you're in a position where are they? So Dallas is playing Washington, which should be a gimme. And you have to play, where is it? The Giants, who are a better team, are primarily a defensive team. So if you put them in now, because you have to win this game, you got a defense coming after you that could potentially make that injury worse right before going into the playoffs. But you kind of don't have a choice because with the tiebreakers there, the division records, if Dallas wins and you lose, the division flips. So now you're a wild card team, and depending on what happens with Minnesota, actually no, even if Minnesota wins because Dallas beat them, I think they would end up with the top seed.
Yeah, and this is really the thing about ligaments is they don't repair very well. You see that with labral injuries. They have to surgically repair them because the capsule, and again, that's another capsule is frayed or cut in some way. But there's also the fact that an AC joint injury you can get through because even if it's a little loose, well, you need movement of that joint. Whereas stability is key in that SC joint. You want very little movement, just enough that your collarbone can go up and down in its space. But otherwise, it's a joint that is what we look at joint by joint approach. Stable is always downstream from a mobile joint, and the SC joint is a stable joint. The AC joint is a mobile joint. So when it comes to producing force, if you have an injury to a stable joint, then there's going to be that stable joint is stable because, or needs to be stable because there's so much more force being produced in relation to that joint. Whereas the mobile joint, if it had the same forces on it, it would tear every time because it needs to be built for movement. And so if you have something that destabilizes that more proximal joint, and you have very poor healing, well, you can really seriously hurt yourself if you keep pushing it through. I mean, probably something that wouldn't even be, that could be an injury you never come back from.
I'm trying to find more info and I can't. So the talking heads seem to think it doesn't matter because the Giants are locked into their spot because of the way the records are. The Giants are locked into the 6th seed. So whichever one of those still in the hunt teams manages to accidentally fall in to the last wild card spot, they're going to be at 7, and whoever Dallas or Philly, whoever ends up there, they're going to stay ahead of the Giants. So the game is meaningless for New York, except it's not meaningless when you've got a new coach, some new front office people, and you're trying to reinstill the winning mentality that New York has been known for. I kind of feel like you're going to go after them because as the 6th seed, you need momentum going in because you're not going to have the help of home field or the help of playing lower seeds.
Well, and on defense, it's a little different than offense. When you're sitting players, you still typically rotate your defensive linemen in their normal rotation. In fact, that's as protective of them as sitting the, like if you're a quarterback, it's an easy sit because there's no rotation there. If you're a running back, then you just bring somebody up from the practice squad to rotate in. But the defensive linemen, you tend to keep your rotation going as it preserves all the linemen, because when you get, it's such a tiring position that once you get to the next game, then if you blew out your second string lineman, then you don't have the same rotation for your starters within the game. And it's a different beast just because of the tiring nature of being a defensive lineman. You're first of all, you're usually giving up about 50 pounds to the offensive lineman. And second of all, they control the push or pull because they know the play. And so you're either going 100 miles an hour in a rush, or you're resisting somebody who's 50 pounds heavier than you.
Still can't find a freaking video of the injury. Oh well. It's annoying. Annoying, but irrelevant.
Yeah, irrelevant. If it's an SC joint injury, it could be just minor enough that they just want to give it a break. Get a sprain, a first degree sprain could be just even an overstretching of the ligament, and it's just taking time to kind of tighten back up. Sprains, it's just such a wide range. But if it's a second degree, or it's definitely not a third degree. Looking at that structure, I can't. Someone would have to rip your collarbone out for it to be a third degree. For it just to be a movement-based injury, it's a 360 ligament. I don't see that being the case. Now, if it was one of those 2 support ones that were going vertical, maybe I could see one of those getting torn, but their force vectors aren't much different. So you would almost have to tear both of them to tear one of them.
And is that even a grade 2 there, is that going to impact your ability to activate your pec? Is that going to cause pain with pec activation?
Let me look at that joint again. We'll just look at insertions here. Let's see. No, because they're actually pulling the opposite. They're pulling along the same line as the pec would pull. So see how the arc of the collarbone is? That's what creates the structure from a force vector going this way. Now, what I would wonder if that would make your top rib more vulnerable. Because if the top rib's more vulnerable, then you could get nerve and blood flow issues going down. It's called thoracic outlet syndrome, when the top rib raises and then it pinches all the nerves and blood vessels going through here. So that could be a possibility. But your pec, no, I would be more worried about the SCM pulling up on it with those two being torn.
So causing pain every time you move around here, as well as potentially tugging at it to cause further injury.
Yeah. And then you would actually be reliant on the pec to counterbalance it. You could end up with spasms. You could end up with all kinds of stuff. But yeah, the collarbone is pretty cool because it's such a small little thing, but it is incredibly strong if you think of the forces that are produced in relation to it. So it's a pretty cool structure. And just looking at the attachment point there, you could see that, well, when you see something that strong in the human body, it's probably because it needs it. Right? You see some of that in the hip, in the SI joint and stuff. All of those ligaments just coming in together to hold it in one. And if one of them is off, everybody that's had SI joint pain, low back pain, that's right in the middle where the tailbone is, pretty much just above the tailbone where it connects to the pelvis, a little bit off goes a long way to being debilitating pain. Anything really proximal down your spine, where your hip meets, up here is a pivotal point, where that joint is, mid back, where all the back muscles come together and connect to the scapula. All of these things, one little thing off can be debilitating. That's why it's such a robust structure. And if you damage that, then I'd say go through the healing process.
That actually segues nicely into the bit of fitness stuff I wanted to ramble about. Mostly a bit of kind of follow-up cleanup from our last, which was making a 6-day-a-week program for me. I don't have it on my desktop.
Which audience I have been cursed out for already.
Yeah, so with the holidays, with traveling, I didn't actually start it until yesterday. So yesterday was day one, and I had forgotten that you put rower hits as the conditioning for that first day, and it was not fun. Well, there's something we can actually start with, because I don't know the witchcraft, and I was thinking, if you're going to do multiple hits, how much time between do you need in order to get enough recovery to make doing another hit worthwhile?
In the same workout?
Yeah, in the same session.
So the Tabata studies, which is about as intense as you get with HIIT, they did a 3-minute rest.
Okay.
And even when I'm doing the sprint training with my pitchers and stuff, say we're doing 10 by 100 sprints, I'll do 10 by 100 sprints, and it's a minute between sprints, but 3 minutes between sets. 3 minutes. If you glycolysis is you're pretty much your go-to energy source for intensity that lasts up to 3 minutes of continuous activity. So anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes. But no matter how fast you deplete that within that window, you're just depleting the sugars in your cells. It takes approximately 3 minutes to replenish. So if you do HIIT where you're trying to deplete it in the 30 seconds or so, then it takes approximately 3 minutes to recover from that. So you do. Sorry. But I wish they'd just wait till they're outside to start barking. As you could see, he came down the stairs. He was barking the whole way.
They have to let you know that there's a goose out there or something.
Yeah. Well, and unfortunately, with the holidays, people have been walking around the lake more during the day because they're home from work and stuff. And so it's been all day, every day. But yeah, 3-minute recovery is typically the same. You know, when you're maxing someone out, you usually give them about a 5-minute just to give a little extra. But yeah, your Tabatas, do your 8 sets of 2010s and then 3 minutes. Is that what you did for your hit?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tabata.
yeah.
Okay, so I got a good story at Tabata on a rower. They were doing a study at UHCL, and it was one of the facilitators of the study was Nate, who worked for me. And he asked if I wanted to be a test subject. I was like, yes, I do. And the study was comparing different conditioning modalities in a Tabata style workout while hooked to a metabolic cart. So exactly how much energy are you expending during these Tabatas, comparing different things? And we did a baseline, we did a VO2 max test, then we did a 2-week washout, then we did a kettlebell swing, or randomized. This was randomized, so you could either have one of these three: a kettlebell swing, a rower, and what was the other one? I think it was just a regular sprint, like a hill sprint on the treadmill. And it was a crossover, so every 2 weeks you randomly do a different one until you've done all three. And when I did the rower, it was my last one. Luckily, it was the last one because I got to do all three. But uh, I was in the middle of the Tabata, and it was definitely the most intense. And I went like super rhythmic in there to where the heart rate monitor stopped reading me, and it just started saying error, 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 error. So I was basically going tachycardia during this thing.
That's not
But
good.
I'm so used to it that I was still pushing through. And while I wasn't looking at the error message, I was just knowing that it sucked, and I felt like I was going to die, which I guess I could have. But when that was all through, the lab lead, Bill Eminette, he came up to me, he said, "Yeah, you're not allowed to be a test subject anymore." But yeah, my data being thrown out, it was still the most intense of all of them, the rower Tabata.
Mhm.
Although someone almost broke their leg on the kettlebell swing one of the study proctors, because I was in there while another guy that from my gym that had volunteered for it was out there. He was doing his swings, and the guy behind him holding the tubes that were coming out for the metabolic cart was right behind him. And you know how the kettlebell swings behind your butt a little bit. Well, they were having trouble positioning, and in the middle of the swing, he's like, "Move back," and the guy moved back that was swinging, and the kettlebell. So if this is the guy's leg, the kettlebell went right there where his shin was and came back.
Ow.
That was almost a 35-pound kettlebell to the shin. Yeah, that probably would have broke it.
It certainly wouldn't have felt good.
No,
All right.
that's my rower story. But now continue on your your question.
We'll see. That was the first one, was about that. Now we did an episode on that witchcraft where you went through the different elements of energy usage, the way your metabolism, has different ways of utilizing different kinds of energy, but it's not three separate things. It's a progression.
Mhm.
It's like changing gears. So that's important, and you could see that as Sam was thinking out loud while he was talking, because the reason you've got the triset set up is so that when you come back around to that primary exercise, you have had sufficient rest, but not too much rest. And so you take that into account when you're doing, you know, bilateral versus unilateral. If you're doing a single arm or single leg thing, well, then the first leg is resting while you're doing the next set of split squats or whatever. So that will cycle into the rest. And uh
It
I
depends a little bit. The split
yeah.
squat's a bad example because
Yeah,
both legs are working. They're just working differently.
yeah.
Whereas
It's
a
which
better
muscles
example
are
would be
engaging.
like a dumbbell row, where the other arm is pretty much completely resting while the working arm is going. Now,
Yeah,
pistol squats would be a good example for
yeah,
that.
yeah. Those are fun. I wish I could do them without TRX support.
Use what you got to use.
Yeah. Um, so I rarely see anyone not resting enough anymore. And I blame your phone. I used to see some more of that, of people that would just, you know, rack it, breathe for a second, and then keep going. And at that point, you're no longer doing anything that's gonna boost your strength. You're doing an endurance workout. Um, and if that's your goal, fine, but you need to keep that in mind. Now, what I see are people resting too much because they sit there and they play on their phone forever. Um, and this is probably something you're gonna have to swing into with the witchcraft of it. But if I'm doing, brain fart, here we go. Okay, so uh, like today is weighted bridge 3x10. Okay, if I play on my phone for 2 to 3 minutes between sets, I'm resting too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially for a 3x10 setup. Now there's a little controversy, although the general rules still mostly apply. Because 3x10 typically golden standard was a minute break if you were just doing sets. You didn't have any like we do with the trisets and everything. If you were doing just 10 reps rest, 10 reps rest, like the old DeLorme 3x10 model, it's 1 minute rest in between because that was just enough time to replenish what you needed without giving you so much rest that you're still not building up the effects of the set before. Because each set you'll notice the lactic acid builds up a little, or the lactate, excuse me, builds up a little faster because you're not completely letting it clear out. But that's part of the goal. Except we've had some research that compared that standard minute rest in between with a longer rest that allows you to do a greater intensity, a greater weight, because you rested an extra 30 seconds or minute. And it turned out to be slightly in favor of the longer rest, higher weight for the 10. So I'd say let other variables determine that. If you're pressed for time, let that lactate buildup give you the effect. If you're progressing to a strength model, you might give it that little bit of longer rest. And what are the two that are paired with that?
Let's see, what have I got today?
Because I think what that one does, it's going to give you about a minute and a half, 2 minute rest, but you're doing something the whole time.
Swords and hip flexor stretch.
Yep. Yeah. So you're going to get about a minute and a half, 2 minute rest. So you'll be able to push hard on those weighted bridges each set.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple reasons for the cycle, the rest cycle as well. How do I want to explain this? So for most of us, the I missed a chance to give my quip when you asked what your fitness goals were when we were doing that, which is, like most of us, I want to look better naked. That is 90-something% of people, those are their fitness goals, can be summed up that way. Well, that's going to be a combination of building up the muscle structure and then reducing the fat over the muscle structure so you can see. That's what makes you look lean. Well, there's a reason most strongman competitors don't look like bodybuilders or don't look like, Captain America, because you have to rest that long to lift the weights at the reps they're lifting to recover, because what matters is the overall load.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
they're also eating
they're also eating 8 to 10,000 calories a day, I think is what Eddie Hall said in that when he was in that
10 to 12.
10 to 12,
yeah.
maybe.
I remember when I was really doing the fasting hardcore, I would make a meal. I'd probably eat twice a day, and one of the meals was a whole bag of those pre-made hash browns with like 8 to 10 eggs and something else for flavoring in there. And that's a big meal. about 1,500 calories, and it's about half of what I needed for the day. And that was his breakfast out of 10 meals.
Yeah.
And every meal was that size.
So for you, the average fitness consumer, that's not what you want to do. That's not what you want to look like. And the ability to lift those kind of loads doesn't really do anything for you. So if you're resting too long, you're letting that heart rate come down too much. So one of the points of
Well, that's the powerlifter joke. 3 reps? What is this, cardio?
exactly. So that and you were referring to that with the the lactic acid buildup and all that is you're letting yourself recover, but you don't want to recover back down to your baseline because then you're not getting as much overall effect. Does that make sense? Is you're resting and then you're bouncing up and then you're bouncing up and then you're bouncing up so that you're able to keep going for longer than you could. You can't your sprint example is a good one of the rest of sprint so far and then rest and then sprint again. You couldn't just sprint straight out for,
Well, then it wouldn't be a sprint.
exactly. You're going to start slowing. There's a reason the Tabata is structured the way it is, because if you tried to go max effort for 4 minutes, you just wouldn't. But you give yourself that 10 seconds, and then some of those systems recover, and then you're able to go not necessarily max effort, but max for what you can do right now.
Well, and
You're
even
able to
still,
extend that.
what people forget or don't know, period, is Tabatas were studied on elite cyclists.
Yes.
And it was originally on a cycle. And there's a reason why they had to be elite cyclists, because elite cyclists can ride at their max heart rate for up to 90 minutes,
which is ridiculous.
And they still had an extreme dropout rate in the Tabata testing. So a normal person is going to either have a slightly diluted result or not be able to make it through. So what I like to do with Tabatas is actually mix 2 movements. And I'm blanking on the name of the guy I got this from, but he's down in Corpus. It was a local conference. But you take 2 opposing, a good example would be jumping jacks and mountain climbers. So they're both total body movements. They're both going to get your heart rate up, but they're different enough that you can do them kind of back to back. And so you can jump to your heart's content and then drop down on the ground and do those mountain climbers and then go back and forth between the 2, and your heart rate's still going. But the rest of you kind of gets a little bit of a break.
Which is going to lead to greater caloric deficit, greater caloric use, I should say, and because the deficit is going to depend on your dieting. So if your goal is to look better naked, you don't want too much rest because then you're not getting that greater caloric burn, but you want enough rest to to the point you were making about 1 minute standard versus a little bit longer, because you need to be able to push that weight, whatever your exercise you're doing, to the limit of the rep range, because most of your result, I want to say that I saw a study a few years back that was something like 80% comes in like the last 2 reps. 80% of your muscle growth, muscle reaction comes in like the last 2 reps as you approach failure.
See, I don't like that, because that wouldn't count unless all the reps before it happened. No, you want your resistance to put you at basically the edge of your ability around the last 2 reps. But that's a performance thing, because if you push it too far, like if you want it to be start to feel like the max effort around the last one, then you're probably going to hit failure a lot of times and not complete your set. Whereas if you do it if it starts too early, you're most likely not going to make it through a lot of your sets. And if you try to hit it on the last rep every time, then there's going to be a lot of times where you hit the last one and you go, I could have done 2 more. So yes, optimally you want to get to where those last 2 reps are the squeeze out. but the effect of it is a cumulative effect. Unless you're doing a 2-rep max, the effect you're getting isn't even possible until the ones before it. So I hate when those kind of studies they get you lost in the minutia.
Yes. I took it as demonstrating that those last couple of reps need to be very difficult, or I won't say wasting your time, but you're not getting the effect you want.
That's why I like a rep range, because if I'm working, say hypertrophy sets, 8 to 12 reps is typically your hypertrophy rep range.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll set it as, say, 3 sets of 10 to 12. And if you hit 12, go up. If you can't hit 10, go down. If you're maxing out at 12, perfect, because it's just going to get harder each set. So that's why I like the rep range there, because you almost always end up with those last 2 reps being within the range you want to be in. And your body doesn't go, oh, that was 13 and not 12 today, I'm not going to grow. It just knows that you pushed as hard as you can in a range that gives us the physiological markers that it needs for it, which is lactate buildup in the hypertrophy. This is why the 8 to 12 is so big, because it's kind of that happy place where you can push the intensity hard and still go long enough to get the buildup of those chemical processes. So it's both neurological and chemical at that stage. Whereas in the lower rep ranges, the 1 to 5s, it's almost all neurological. You don't do enough reps to get a burn. Whereas in the LME, the local muscle endurance, you get lots of that burn. You probably get lots of that for 5, 6, 7 reps of that set, a burn, but you're not getting a high enough intensity neurological response for your body to want to say, well, we need to build some more motor units in there and connect these muscle fibers together. And well, you don't need that tensile strength because it's so light. So that 8 to 12 range kind of seems to be, per the research, the happy place where you're high enough intensity to get the response there, and you're high enough volume to get the chemical response.
The other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, or kind of wrapping up here, at least in my brain. Another thing to note is when Sam was talking out loud while he was making the program, he was talking in movement. It wasn't, I need a curl here, I need a chest exercise here. That was something that very quickly set me apart from any other trainer, especially when I was working in a box gym, because I got from you is program movement. Don't program muscle or muscle groups. Asterisk, there are no solutions, only trade-off, and just about every rule has an exception. So show everyone your booby, Sam. For anyone who has forgotten or wasn't around, all right, if you pop your man boob off of its anchor there, then yeah, you're going to have to focus in on the muscle, because that muscle needs to be rehabilitated, right? So that is going to require some muscular focus. But for the most part, what you're doing is, I need these, this is the way the body moves. So I need to program these movements in here in various ways.
Well, it's an interplay of understanding the physiology and the biomechanics. My degree is physiology and biomechanics because you need them both. So I need to understand the movement and how it's optimally done, how we can manipulate the movement to get different responses. But I have to understand the underlying physiology to know what I'm affecting when I do that. So like you brought up my booby. Well, right now, standard bench press is not the best idea for me right now, because it's what I've figured out with force production with this right now in about a year and 3 months of rehabilitation, is it's actually more about the stretch of the muscle than it is about the force. So I can do a dumbbell press at under 45 degrees with somewhere around 100-pound dumbbell right now, maybe a little more, but I can barely do a bench press fully externally rotated. So there's still a horizontal push, both of them are. But understanding the origins and insertions of the muscle, I know how to stretch it and strain it in different directions and what can be optimal for working that. So I want to build the muscle and the tendon back up, but I want to do it as safely as possible. So I have to stay within a certain range. And who knows, maybe it's a permanent compromise, maybe it's not. We'll figure that out as time goes. But what we can do is we can build it up in this range and then really pull the intensity back and start working range of motion in this range. And if it doesn't work out, then we just say, well, I won't be doing bench press, you know.
Yep.
So
The
it's
other
an interplay. It's both. Now, I don't like body part splits, not just because motion promotes health, because one of the goals of exercise is to move well. Now, you have to understand the underlying structures to know how they affect the movement, like I just talked about. But at the same time, we want to build up. Let's see, where was I going with that? Oh, at the same time, you can do body part splits if you do them right. But the way we think of them, it's not good for natural lifters, because your frequency of training is too split up. Now, if you wanted to say, I'm going to work back and quads twice a week, and I'm going to work butt and chest twice a week, that's doing body parts, but it's still a good split, because you're going to get your hinges, you're going to get your squats, you're going to get your horizontal vertical presses, you're going to get your horizontal vertical pulls. It's just you said it in the language of the muscles versus in the language of the movements. Movement splits tend to be more all-inclusive, whereas a bodybuilder split, I'm working chest and triceps, I'm working shoulders, I'm working back and biceps, I'm working so that was 4, I'm working legs, and then I have an ab day. Well, that's 6 days. That's a whole week if you have a rest day in there before you touch the same thing. That doesn't work for natural lifters, not for very long anyways.
Because you're not going to be able to pile enough work into one day to really see the results you want.
Yeah, it's not okay. So here's my quote. It's not how much work you can do, it's how much work you can recover from. And body part splits tend to over volume the body parts on one day and then not visit them frequently enough, because you need that long to recover. Only when you add how our hormonal system works and our nervous system works as far as stimulating growth, you're not doing that during the whole rest. At some point, your body just says, let's get this back to good, because it's no longer receiving the signal that said we did this super hard thing.
It kind of goes along with the mantra of, if you only work out when you're not sore, you'll never stop being sore. Of you, especially once you're first starting, you've got to get past that initial lifting soreness that you get. You've got to push through that, because that's your body saying, ow, I'm not used to this. But if you just sit and let it recover until you're not feeling any soreness, and not pain, soreness anymore, then you've kind of let it reset itself, and it didn't learn, so to speak. It didn't grow from what you did. It's just kind of resetting itself.
And we also have to separate beginners from experienced as well. Everything's going to work if you're a beginner. The boot camp model is designed to tear up beginners, because they're going to get results no matter what. But once you've done the process for a little while, you need to start getting more in tune with how these things work. You know, natural lifters, you have to hit the structures more than once a week. Twice a week seems to be optimal, but again, it depends on intensity. If it's a lower intensity, my phase 1 is what we call a high frequency program. Every part of your body works every day, just different, like you said, movement patterns. And we focus on the movement patterns in that phase, because it's about developing general movement in the person. It's about developing a 360 kind of approach to how does my body fit in space. Whereas in my hypertrophy, which is the next phase after that, we break it upper lower. And that kind of is a muscle, a structure split, because now we're doing higher volume each day, but you get 3 days of rest before your next one. So Monday would be, we'll say legs, Tuesday upper body. Well, legs are resting in the upper body. Then you get a rest day, and then you hit legs again. So there's the third day you're hitting legs again. So that's kind of a body part split, but you're still getting everything twice. And now you look at movement patterns to how you're going to work that body part in that time. But you also get more rest in between because the volume is higher. But it's still not, it's still hitting you with enough frequency that you keep that signal going. So it's a big interplay. And then strength, I do the squat, push, pull. This is my normal program: squat, push, pull, and then a total body circuit day, and then 2 days rest. So you're neurologically taxing these different movement patterns, which takes a lot longer to recover from because you're doing a higher intensity. So you're doing a 3-rep max deadlift, your body's kind of toast for 3 days. That's why I typically do that on Thursday, because then we just got a total body circuit the next day to give you a once over before the weekend. And then you get Saturday, Sunday, then you come back and you do your squats.
The other advantage that programming movement and not body parts gives you is it keeps you from being shackled to a particular exercise, which is important if you are training, whether yourself or someone else, in a public gym. Well, crap, I'm supposed to do this right now, this exercise right now, but all of those machines or benches or whatever are filled up. Well, no, okay, I need to do this movement. I can't do that exercise, which is what I was planning to do, because that machine or whatever is taken. So let me do this movement instead, which is the same horizontal pull, let's say. All right, well, I'll do horizontal pulls. Maybe I'll modify it in this way to make it more like what I was trying to do. Done. All right, now I can keep moving. I don't have to sit there and twiddle my thumbs waiting for someone to stop playing on their phone for 3 minutes between sets so that I can use the one piece of equipment I need.
Yeah, horizontal pull, say you had T-bar rows on your list for that day, and you walk in and the setup for that is being taken up just like you described. Well, now you can walk over and do a barbell row, or you can get on that cable and do the seated cable rows or something along those lines, and you didn't waste your day. Now that's for general fitness. Again, when we're looking at specific sport training like powerlifting, well, you have to get under the bar and do the squats because we got the neurological component. You're trying to get better at squats as well as get big and strong. So there's the repetition effect of that, where you need that. Or if you're trying to progress that T-bar row for whatever reason you want, it's not just a horizontal pulling exercise for your back, then you probably need to work that T-bar row in. But if you're working just for general fitness, figure out the next best way to load your system in a similar matter. And that helps too over time, because one of the themes with what I do is not just getting better now, but getting better for later. And variety is a controversial subject in fitness, because powerlifters love variety, but it's specific to their goal because they have to get good in these 3 movements. P90X, muscle confusion, is the key to adaptation. It's all about variety. It's the other extreme of the spectrum. But I use variety for 2 reasons. First of all, it allows me to have higher volume in my program because I don't over pattern my clients. But it also it gives you that freedom, like you talked about, where if I came in and I needed to do this certain pull, but the one I wanted to do is taken up, well, I'm not married to it. I'm not psychologically damaged because I couldn't do the exercise I wanted to do, or wasting time just waiting for something to come open. I can make that modification. And over time, that actually helps, because you might save yourself from an over patterning from an exercise that you just really love and you keep programming into your program, but every once in a while you don't get to do it.
Yep. Well, that's all I got. Did you have anything else
No,
for today?
that was it. Oh, disclaimers: we are not your coaches. You're not our clients. If you were, you'd be paying us. So this does not constitute any direct advice. We're not doctors. We're going to wait for more information on the first thing we talked about. And if you have a shoulder injury, please go see an orthopedic doctor. Don't listen to us on everything. And anything else?
Yep. We'll see y'all next time.
See you next time. Wheel time next time.